What's up, people? Peek out here in Singapore, and I am coming at you live because I have another message for you guys. So, I have been, kind of busy today actually. I feel pretty good about it, but left the house for an interview uh, to see if I could possibly collaborate with somebody because they happen to be putting together a workshop that has to do with wealth and health. And I thought maybe that I might have a shot at getting to know the people, getting to know the owner, and seeing if there was possibility of me actually speaking at this event. So I went down, met this young man, and it was a fabulous, fabulous conversation. And I had the opportunity to really pick his brain about what it is that he saw for himself and see where I could, possibly help out or contribute to his cause. And it just so happens that everything I needed to know to pick myself up, to figure out my place, my next step with my business was in that conversation. So, to give you a little background, I have been a little worried of late. Life is not always perfect, and I hit a snag in my business. And I was worried about whether I was doing the right things. I was worried about whether all the work I've done so far was actually enough to qualify me, for that next step to take myself a little more public and market myself to businesses and stuff. And this conversation kind of just clarified and confirmed all of that. And I want to thank the fact that rock bottom is probably my least favorite place and my most favorite place at the same time. So let me explain that real quick. The beauty of rock bottom for me is all about learning to conserve what you have to make it really last, and really understanding what is necessary to build a business and really what's not. There's so many times when I had the money and didn't have the time, but I had the money. I would make excuses for why I couldn't do certain things. All of last year, actually, I wasn't as consistent as I have been this year with the podcast, mostly because I was making excuses. There would be times where I wanted to get on live, and I would think about it 10 times a day, but just never get on live. And then I would miss several days in a row from the podcast itself. So basically, what I'm trying to explain to you guys is sometimes we wait for an excuse not to do something. Sometimes we say, oh, I can't do this until I have this piece of equipment. I can't do this until I have that kind of certification. I can't do this until someone so gives me permission. Like, it could be a million different reasons for why you can't do something. But rock bottom will really have you choosing between what you can and can't, like literally what you can and can't do. There is nothing that says that you can't sing your favorite songs with just the background instrumental on live video from YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook every day for a solid year if you wanted to. There's nothing that says you can't do that. You could do that 3 times a day if you wanted. Nothing says you can't. And it doesn't cost any money. If you have a phone, you already have everything you need. Let me put this in perspective for you. I don't have an app that produces this podcast. It doesn't produce the podcast. This is live. This is live Facebook audio. And I know it works for me, and it's still available to me because I use it every day. I know people who used to use Facebook Live audio, the function, and no longer have it because they did not use it consistently. So it was removed from their abilities on their Facebook account. I know for a while there, I wasn't sure, but I knew that I wanted to produce the podcast. I wanted to try and distribute it, right? And I tried it on Anchor. And yes, it was distributed, and it was a different podcast than the one you hear right now. I did a nighttime reading children's stories with my daughter to kind of discuss the books and everything. And that went really well for a little while. And it was distributed and everything, but the difficulty was I couldn't migrate the podcast that I do have onto that platform. That was the difficulty. I lost the ability to do that. So in the end, I couldn't distribute the way I wanted to, even though I was on SoundCloud. I had to find a separate aggregator to actually help distribute. But honestly speaking, I don't need all the gadgets. I don't need all the apps. I don't need a mic or a headset or any of those things. I don't need soundproofing in my room. I just need to turn my damn fan off and I'm good to go. And I love the fact that it's raw like this and it's unedited because it's me. I didn't take out the best parts of the podcast. I didn't, adjust the filter on my voice or anything. This is how I sound. You meet me on the street, this is how I sound. You want to talk to me in person? This is the lingo I will use. Depending on how Singaporean you are and how comfortable I am with you, you may hear a little more Singlish than normal. But this is who I am. Rock bottom is when you really get rid of that excess weight, all of that fat you don't need, and you work with what you have. You slim down, you pare down, you really go lean on your processes and your business. And honestly, sometimes that's what you need in life. You need to get kicked to the bottom and push to use the things you do have. Rock bottom for me, let me tell you what that looked like. Rock bottom for me meant that I didn't have extra money to waste on subscriptions. I couldn't afford to just have a subscription to MailChimp and a subscription to, Boss Babe. It was a newsletter that I used to get from them. I couldn't afford just a random subscription to, let me see. It was a couple of different apps that I had that would just take money every month. And when I didn't have the money to spare, I wasn't even thinking about it. I realized where the money was going. I was double booked for Microsoft Office for some reason. I was paying twice a month instead of once, and it didn't make any sense to me. Hey, Jacqueline. And so I had to cut that out. I had to really slim down and make sure that what I was spending was really necessary for me to spend. I had an app. I had a subscription to LinkedIn Profile, and that's a brilliant application. But I never used it. I paid for it, but I never used it. And when it came down to, okay, do I want to eat or do I want to pay $10 a month? $10 USD is about $13 over here. Okay. So I had to really think about that. $13, I can make that go a long way in the house. I did not need an app I wasn't using. I needed to pay attention. I got to a point where I started moving money. So every time my paycheck would come in, I would move the money to another account so that all of my auto debits, I was forced to check before I moved money into the account and paid for it. That's how I figured out where all my money was going, because I wasn't paying attention. I would sign up willy-nilly and be like, oh yeah, $10 ain't nothing, I could do that. I had to really pay attention. I kept the things I really actually used and needed, and I got rid of the rest, and I learned to manage within that. We do this a lot. We buy things we don't need. We sign up for shit we don't use. And then the money just goes, and it's a small, insignificant number at the time when we have money, but when we don't have money, it makes sense. It makes a difference. I am proud to say that rock bottom is where this diamond of a queen was made. I'm not like everybody else. I'm not going to make any more excuses. I'm going to use what I have and get what I need. Now, what I realized today, because of that meeting with that young man, was the fact that I've been putting in the work in little bits and pieces all over my business. I've done at least 10 different live videos with my cousin who's based in Malaysia. She wanted me to help teach her and her audience some things. And I just went through my regular process, what I would do with clients, but I did it in a very small scale. It's not in as much detail as it would be if you were a one-to-one client, but I didn't realize I had been putting in the work already. The backbone of the course that this young man wanted me to create or give him access to be able to promote, I already have. I just need to clean it up, which means I need to make sure that the content is very specific and clear, and I need to reshoot the film. So I am actually really excited about this next step. To date, all of my clients have been online. To date, I have not had the opportunity to actually do the work in person here in Singapore. But part of that also has been because I've been comfortable online. But I need to get back into that uncomfort zone, that discomfort zone, and push myself to the next level, because guess what? Don't nobody know me here in Singapore. Y'all know me in IG land. Y'all know me in Facebook land. A lot of y'all stateside, y'all know me because I grew up there. But the people here in Singapore, it's about time you really got to know me. And I'm ready. I'm up to the challenge. I'm excited because what I teach really transforms lives. What I teach is so simple that the relationships in and around your life will become simple too. Can you imagine that? If your relationships were really simple, how much less stress there would be? You wouldn't have to worry about whether they got the message when you said such and such. You don't have to be passive aggressive no more. You can come out and say what you need to say because you have now cleaned up your life to the point that you have meaningful relationships around you. People that take you seriously, people that put your relationships first, people who are willing to listen and meet you halfway. And isn't that all we want? But what most of us end up doing is actually making the relationships we have fit, whether they fit or not. Forcing them to fit, hanging on because you'd rather be in a relationship than be alone. But what ends up happening is it becomes complicated. Suddenly there's more and more things you can't talk about because it causes strife. And if you understand who you are and why you feel the way you feel about things, it becomes so much easier to explain to the other person why you prefer certain processes, certain skills, certain ways to do things inside a house. That becomes so much easier to articulate. And if you can say it clearly, it means they can hear it clearly. And if you have the kind of trust you should have within your relationships, then you can discuss the idea without getting heated or offended, both of you. So isn't that worth the risk? Isn't that worth learning a new skill set for? Because I'm telling you, if somebody could have taught me that back when I was married, maybe I'd still be married. But it's all good. I teach that now. I learned the hard way and I teach that for other people because I believe in marriage. I believe in being faithful and monogamous. I believe that that's possible for everybody. But that means you got to be upfront about everything. You got to be honest from the get. You got to know what you want to be able to be honest from the get-go. So I'm saying, I built my business on next to nothing. I didn't spend on Facebook ads. I just did the work. For a year or so, I was convinced that all I had to do was do the work. And I did. I did the work. But it took a while to get out of the comfort zone of just doing work and starting to tell people I was open for business. That was a major mindset shift. I was uncomfortable doing that because suddenly I had to talk about prices. And I didn't like talking about prices because there's always the off chance that someone would say, you're too expensive, I'm not interested. But guess what? I mastered that too. I got over it. I started doing that. And then the next thing was tooting my own horn. I don't really like tooting my own horn. I was always raised on the impression of you don't talk about yourself, you don't brag. People should do that for you. If 4 people can say a good word about you, then you got it made in the shade. But guess what? To talk about your feelings and then have to talk about your coach and how good they are, if they're good, that's different. And then to talk about myself and what I do, that's different and uncomfortable. I would so much rather talk about you. I would so much rather, promote other people. And I did that for a while too. But I'm finally at that point where I love what I do. I'm proud of what I do. I don't care who asks me. I'm going to tell you this is what I do. I'm not going to stop for nobody because I started with just doing the work. I've gotten a lot more intentional. I've gotten a lot more focused in what I do and what I say and how I say it. And I've stopped being afraid to ask questions of the public. Sometimes they interact with me and sometimes they don't. But the point is, whether you interact with me now or you catch the replay later, I'm going to say what I have to say. Because I know there's a me out there somewhere looking for an answer, hoping that there's some way that they can dig themselves out of whatever situation they happen to be in. And from where I stand, it starts with how you feel. If you can tell me very plain English, like a child, how you feel, then we can start working. None of this kind of sort of maybe, a little bit. No. I am angry. I am sad. I am unhappy. That's enough. That's where vulnerability starts. And then we can start having a discussion about, okay, when did that happen? What happened? Why is that a problem? What do you actually believe? How should this look in your life? These are the questions I had to ask myself at rock bottom. Like I said, I've been there a couple of times in different phases of my life. And you know what? I love it because there's nowhere to go but up. It reminds me that I can accomplish so much more than I gave myself credit for, and I have already accomplished more than people know about. Talking to that man today, he was like, you know what, I looked for you and I couldn't find you. Well, he couldn't find me because he searched for my last name. If he had searched for my brand name, he would have found me everywhere. And when I went back to send him the links to all the things that I did, I realized just how much I've accomplished. I'm a published meditation person on Insight Timer. I have 8 meditations on there. 8, just 8. And with just 8 meditations, I have 50,000 times that those meditations have been listened to. I have an audience of 500. I haven't promoted anything on Insight Timer. I haven't gone out and talked to anybody. Anytime I do get comments, I do respond to them. And I take those comments seriously because that means I know what to do next to make my meditations better. But the funny thing is, I uploaded them. It took them about 6 months to go through everything and decide that they were going to approve them for publishing. And I didn't do anything with that after that. When I went to tell him that I did meditations and I went to look for the link to send him, that's when I discovered that I had 50,000 listens to my meditations. My podcast is on it's on SoundCloud and it's on Spotify and it's on iTunes from what I understand. I haven't been able to check it, but yeah, it's there. I did all the legwork way back when. And right now, as August 31st approaches, I'm gearing up to celebrate 500 episodes. That didn't happen overnight. I did the legwork. I have thousands of posts on my Instagram, which means I can go back to the very beginning and repost it again and it will still be relevant because I did the work way back when I didn't have the money to do much else but post the quotes that meant something to me. I branded before I knew much about branding. I made sure that everything lined up with Rasat1 because I knew it would be easier to search for me then. I built my website myself because I didn't have the money to go send somebody else to do it, which means I have creative control of my website and everything in it, which also means I had to build the skill set to be able to create a WordPress site. I'm not big on graphic design, as in I didn't go to school for it. I don't know the first thing about it, but I do know what looks nice and I can manage. Every post that's on my Instagram, I created. Every flyer that I've ever done for any business that I've worked in, because I have a marketing background, I created. And I'm proud to say that because that means the skills that I've accumulated so far have been of use to me. I didn't have to hire anyone to do anything. I didn't have to go through Fiverr. I didn't have to interview people. I did it myself. So going forward, if I ever have the need to hire somebody, I can speak their language. I can exactly tell them what I need. I can communicate well. This is what rock bottom means to me. This is the beauty of rock bottom. You teach yourself. You prove to yourself how bad you want it. Because I could use any of these excuses to quit any one of 1,000 times in the last couple of years. Buying a business license doesn't mean you run a business. Posting on social media doesn't mean you run a business. telling people you have a business and then playing the part, which means you watch your finances, which means you go out and you market to people. You speak to people in person and online. You create an identity online. All of that goes towards building a business. I hired a coach, and whenever I could pay for one-on-one sessions with her, I did. I also hired a coach before the one I have right now, and it was a bust, which also means now that I'm very, very careful with what I do to be able to decide who's going to be my next coach. I look for their online presence. I listen to the way they speak and the way they treat all their guests, how they respond to all their comments. I now have a standard. If they do less than I do, they probably won't be able to connect with me as much and teach me more than I already know. So rock bottom means you clear out all of the excess. You get rid of all of the noise. I don't know about you, but I remember when I had the money, I would buy things and keep it, just in case. And they'll still be very happily new in a box somewhere, which means I've accumulated a bunch of crap. How many of y'all do that? How many of y'all need those things you buy, like really need them? Let me give you an example. I decided I was going to learn to play the ukulele, and I bought a ukulele. And guess what? Because it's not important to me right now, it's not essential to my life and the way I make money, I still have the ukulele. It's been about 3 or 4 years since it's been sitting in a corner gathering dust, and I still don't know how to play it. You hear what I'm saying? So don't knock rock bottom. That's where you really learn what you need and what you don't need. Rock bottom taught me that I need certain essentials in my pantry. The rest would spoil and I would throw it away, and chances are I would think twice before buying it again because I just didn't have the money to waste on crap. I had to buy stuff that was essential. I learned to make snacks. I learned the power of buying fruit when you want something sweet. I learned the power of health when I didn't have the money to spend on boxed stuff. I learned how to make sure that I was always full when I didn't have the money to buy fast food. Do you know how much money you spend on fast food? Let me put this in perspective. To buy one burger that will suit you and fill your need for, your need to eat for one meal, if you're lucky and smart, right, will cost you less than $10. I do meal prep now. And for $10, I can make you 7 breakfasts. And the breakfast I made, because I literally did this yesterday, okay? It was a brioche bun with a slice of cheese, with an omelet that was filled with onions and ground chicken meat that was seasoned, and a hash brown. Can you imagine all of that on a sandwich? Oh, and barbecue sauce, because you need a little something to add to the flavor, right? So can you imagine all of that on a sandwich and how full you would feel? But it's all handmade, made at home so you know exactly what's in it. And for $10, you can eat for 7 days worth of breakfast instead of just one meal. That's how I learned to survive from rock bottom. So there is such a beauty to rock bottom. There is so much you can learn about yourself and what's really essential to your life from rock bottom. And I will forever be grateful for those moments when I found myself at rock bottom, because it reminded me again of how much I could really accomplish and how many excuses I had before when I had the money. So I hope you understand, and I hope you realize how much you really don't need and how much of the excuses you could actually get rid of if you really, really are hell-bent on succeeding. I love you guys, and I hope this helped. Talk to you tomorrow.